Today, we're undertaking a really deep, focused look at a truly monumental document. We are stepping right onto the grand stage of our technological destiny. We're breaking down Pope Leo XIV's 2026 encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas, which translates to the grandeur of humanity. And this isn't just some dense text for theologians. No, it's a profound, highly structured analysis of the digital revolution, artificial intelligence, and what it fundamentally means to just remain human when machines can, mimic our very thoughts. Throughout this explainer, we're going to explore exactly how the Pope is sending a critical message to the world about the ultimate choices we face in this age of AI. So right at the heart of this document lies this core, unavoidable tension. Are we actively choosing our AI future, or are we just sort of passively submitting to it? The encyclical argues that humanity is standing at a major, pivotal crossroads. We're either going to construct a future that actually safeguards human dignity and promotes justice, or we're just going to sleepwalk into submitting to a technocratic dominance that really risks erasing our true identity. It's this massive tension, right, between actively building a shared moral reality or just throwing our hands up and surrendering to the overwhelming convenience of automated systems. To make sense of this, the Pope frames the choice through this incredibly powerful cinematic metaphor straight from antiquity. Think about the Tower of Babel. It was a project conceived totally without moral grounding. It represents submission, godless uniformity, and pure technological dominance, where human dignity gets sacrificed just for the sake of efficiency. It's that illusion that a single digital language can somehow translate the deep mystery of a human person into, just statistical data. But then, in stark contrast, you have the rebuilding of Jerusalem by Nehemiah. This represents active choice, shared responsibility, and true communion. It's all about a plurality of voices actually working together, valuing human dignity, and making an ethical effort to rebuild society. So the choice isn't just some simple yes or no to tech, it's literally a choice between building Babel or rebuilding Jerusalem. Now, you might be wondering, why is a religious institution commenting so heavily on silicon and code? Well, this intervention doesn't just happen out of nowhere. The Church's social doctrine is actually super dynamic. It is continuously adapted to evaluate massive technological and societal shifts throughout history. You can trace this back to 1891 with the Industrial Age, moving through all those post-WW2 changes in the 1960s, confronting the environmental crisis in 2015, and now arriving here in 2026 with Magnifica Humanitas. The text makes it absolutely clear AI is not just another theme or some passing trend, it is a full-blown earthquake that challenges our very categories of human existence. Okay, so what is the big threat here? The encyclical identifies it as the technocratic paradigm. This is that dangerous, super pervasive tendency to let the logic of efficiency, algorithmic control, and just absolute profit dictate all of our personal, social, and economic decisions. When technology stops being just a handy tool and becomes the ultimate standard that judges everything and everyone, we are entering incredibly dangerous territory. Under this paradigm, creation is basically reduced to an object for exploitation, and human beings were reduced to just cogs in a machine driven toward ever greater efficiency. It's terrifying because the value of human life dangerously becomes contingent entirely on its measurable output. And the sheer scale of this is completely unprecedented. The text explicitly states, never has humanity had such power over itself. But here is the really critical twist that the Pope points out. Who actually holds this power right now? In the past, massive technological shifts were mostly governed by democratic states. Today, though, the main drivers of AI are private, often transnational entities. They have resources and power that vastly outstrip a lot of national governments. So this technological power takes on this unprecedented, opaque, and entirely private nature, which obviously makes it incredibly difficult to govern for the common good. Which leads us directly into the specific ideologies the Pope is critiquing, namely transhumanism and posthumanism. The encyclical issues a huge warning against movements that view being human as something inherently flawed, like it's something to be optimized out of existence. If we start treating human limitations like illness, vulnerability, or aging as mere software defects that we need to engineer away, we completely shift our worldview. The profound danger here is that in the name of this supposed progress, it becomes way too easy to accept that some lives are just less useful or less worthy. Because when you treat human weakness as an error, you ultimately start treating vulnerable people as disposable. We have this really dangerous habit of anthropomorphizing machines, but the encyclical draws a super hard line here. AI, at its absolute core, is just statistical adaptation. Yes, it processes immense amounts of data incredibly fast, but it doesn't have a body, it doesn't feel joy, and it has zero moral conscience. It simply cannot understand the real-world consequences of its output. Authentic human intelligence, on the other hand, doesn't grow through data optimization. It grows through lived experiences, deep relationships, making mistakes, and finding forgiveness. An algorithm just sees an error as a flaw it needs to mathematically correct. But a human, we see an error as a profound catalyst for real spiritual and emotional growth. So, how do we actually navigate all this? Well, the document lays out a specific arsenal of ethical criteria to evaluate AI. And these aren't just abstract academic ideas. They're incredibly practical lenses. First, we're called to ensure the common good, making sure this tech benefits all of society. Then, the universal destination of goods insists that digital infrastructure and data absolutely shouldn't be hoarded by a powerful few. Solidarity reminds us that we are deeply interconnected, and social justice demands we look at how AI impacts the most vulnerable people first. And finally, there is the absolutely crucial principle of subsidiarity. Applying a traditional concept like subsidiarity to the digital world is actually fascinating. Subsidiarity basically means that higher-level authorities shouldn't step in and take over the roles of individuals and local communities. But in the age of AI, that higher-level authority isn't necessarily a government anymore. Actually, scratch that. It's almost always a massive tech platform dictating these opaque rules about visibility, human interaction, and economic opportunity. Subsidiarity demands that these hidden algorithms face local, public oversight. It insists that local communities absolutely must have a voice. We can't just have our digital realities dictated top-down by a few unseen tech giants. Because if we fail to enforce those principles, we hit what the text calls the AI monopolies. The thing about AI is it inherently amplifies the power of those who already have the economic resources, the specialized expertise, and those massive data sets required to even run it. This creates a severe global asymmetry. Small, highly influential groups can shape information, influence democratic processes, and steer entire economies totally to their own advantage. And this is a massive threat to social justice because it radically widens the gap between the people included in the digital revolution and the people who are excluded, exploited, and left behind by it. All of these warnings build up to the absolute climax of the Pope's argument. He introduces this highly provocative idea, the need to disarm AI. He writes, to disarm means discrediting the assumption that technical power automatically confers the right to govern. This is such a powerful pushback against technocracy. Just because a corporation built the most advanced algorithm, that does not mean they suddenly have the moral or political right to dictate the boundaries of human society. Disarming AI means pulling it out of this aggressive monopolistic arms race and intentionally bringing it back under the governance of actual human values. So the obvious question is, how do we actually achieve this disarmament? The text outlines some highly practical steps for democratizing AI. First up, we have to break that monopolistic control over data and infrastructure. We need to recognize data as a shared good produced by all of us, not just some private commodity to be hoarded. Next, algorithms can't be black boxes anymore. They have to be subjected to intense public debate and independent democratic oversight. And ultimately, we have to restore this technology to a plurality of human cultures. We have to make it genuinely accessible and human-friendly, instead of just forcing one homogeneous technocratic standard onto the entire globe. As we get to the end, the encyclical pivots to this deeply philosophical and honestly really beautiful conclusion, the beauty of human limits. The text pushes back so hard on the Silicon Valley idea that our finitude is just a bug we need to patch with AI. Instead, it argues that our limitations, our vulnerabilities, our illnesses, our inevitable failures, those are actually the exact spaces where compassion, generosity, and authentic human connection are born. Think about it.
If we optimize away all our limitations, we completely risk extinguishing our capacity for empathy and love. True human grandeur doesn't come from a machine's cold calculation. It comes from our miraculous ability to care for one another despite and often because of our shared fragilities.
So I want to leave you with a final, lingering question to reflect on regarding your own daily relationship with technology. Are we treating our human limitations as a defect that just needs to be optimized and erased by AI? Or are we treating them as a sacred space for authentic human connection? Because that choice, the choice between building a dehumanizing Babel or a shared, compassionate Jerusalem, that begins within the heart and the daily habits of every single one of us.